Hello everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. If you haven't really gotten to understand my channel, basically I share things around scholarships and particularly Australia Awards because I was an awardee once for that. Today I'm going to be focusing more towards the interview part of it. I think when it comes to the interview part of it, it's quite secretive. Partly it's because a lot of, well, not a lot, all awardees, including me, we have to sign an NDA not to disclose any sort of questions or events within the interview process itself. So I do understand the gist of it, like if you find it quite difficult to find some sort of resources or material for preparations for that. But also, I'm going to tell you as well straight away that in this video, I am not going to spill anything about the interview questions. What I would rather suggest today is I'm going to go over my own preparations for the interview parts and perhaps tell you a bit about my story, my journey before actually getting into the interview room. Okay, so I was an awardee in 2021. During that time, there was a COVID pandemic, and I'm pretty sure at those time, a lot of scholarship is sort of cutting their budgets, and a lot of countries are sort of closing their borders as well. Australia was one of them as well. And so when I applied in 2021, a lot of the timeline were pushed back quite a bit. And so instead of having a deadline in February, I believe, for the applications, ours was on April 31st. So it got pushed back quite a bit. And I only got the invitations for the interview later, almost during August, right? And so, usually it's going to take from February until June, but because it was pushed back, August was sort of the time I've gotten the invitations for the scholarship. During this time, it was a time, nerve-wracking time for me because, obviously, like, do I get in? Do I not? Should I apply for different scholarships? Those are worth the time. So that's my context. And so my interview back then was basically done through a teleconference or what we call Zoom. And so, yeah, it's basically just like any other interview. Before I get into the interview, I want to really talk about what sort of things that are preceding the interview, right? For me personally, I've gotten an email in August, last time I checked, and essentially within this email is an invitation for you to proceed to the next step, which is the interview process. And you have to agree to follow through with process by signing an NDA or non-disclosure agreement, essentially stating that you cannot disclose any information about the interview to anyone during this time, right? And so that's what I did. If you want to progress, right? Alternatively, if you are not really sure, you can defer the offer to go to the interview process, right? So if you fill in the form and you send it back to the committee, then obviously you're gonna go and follow through with the process. And I think my invitation was about like 2 weeks or 1.5 weeks before my actual interview for the scholarship. So you do get plenty of time to prepare. Okay, and for myself, my preparation wasn't really all that exciting. It was only me rereading my CVs, rereading my reference letter from my lecturers, essentially like understanding what sort of qualities they're looking at me. Also rereading my personal statement. I think those three are the most reasonable materials because like how else are the joint selection team going to get to me other than just asking more about those three materials, right? And so that was the the progress that makes sense the most, and so I just went with it. Yeah, so it wasn't really complicated at all. I didn't even do any mock-ups just because I prefer to be a bit more spontaneous in terms of my learning process, especially when it comes to interview. I tend to be a bit more genuine. I don't try to act proper or like, show myself in the best way possible, right? I'm just showing up as who I am. So that's that. The interview wasn't, my interview preparation wasn't really all that meticulous at all. And during the interview process, I will tell you this, even though I cannot really disclose to you what sort of questions comes up just because of the NDA again. I would tell you that it is probably one of the most pleasant experience for my interview process. I've been interviewed for jobs, I've been interviewed for different other scholarships, and this is not to glaze Australia Awards in any ways, but for my experience in Australia Awards scholarship interview, it was very pleasant just because how conversational it was. It was very relaxed, like chatting to someone that you've already known. You're gonna meet someone who is probably going to study or already studying studying, in my case, it was a professor from psychology because I was applying for psychotherapy. There's going to be a lot of dialogue that is quite stimulating for you. It wasn't really a dialogue that puts you like in the corner. It's more about like exploring about who you are. It's more about exploring about what sort of passion you have and perhaps like the future plans. Just the usual thing, really. I'm also going to tell you that the time for my interview wasn't really long. It was 20 minutes or 25 minutes. It did feel quite quick just because I was enjoying it, but that is also because the question feels quite explorative. It wasn't really a question that puts you in the corner or try to prick away your base, sort of. So it was very pleasant in general. Everything was quite conversational. Again, I can't tell that enough. Another hint that may help you as well is when I spoke to some of the Australia Awards awardees during my cohort and also the cohort following and the cohort before as well, here's some of the quality that I noticed. So a lot of people who passed the interview process were people who's like, one, they're really passionate about what they are talking about. Like really, they know what they want to talk about. Including me, I was really passionate about mental health, so I know how to answer every questions that they throw at me. But some of my friends who's like doing agriculture or perhaps like aerospace engineering, right? When I ask them about these topics, they're really fired up. Like they really know what they're about. That's first. Second thing is most of these people who are accepted are community oriented, interestingly enough. So people who are concerned in community and sort of people who thinks about how can they bring their knowledge to their community and how this knowledge can just sort of shape their community in general. So, these amazing people that I met genuinely have this like radiating passion for. I think those are the most striking qualities that I've observed across almost everyone who is accepted in Australia Award Scholarship. So that's another hint, right? So other thing that I would like to mention is that during the interview, I found that most people who are like later getting accepted are the people who are not too rigid, if that makes sense. Like they're good planners, sure. They have plans, they know how to answer things, but more so than not, they're open to experiencing new things and to answer in a ways that is quite out of the box. So those are the tenets that I sort of observe across the demography that's quite small as well. So this cannot be generalized in, if you're applying from different countries, for example. Another thing that I should mention is that when it comes to Australia Award Scholarship, it's a bilateral country relationship, right? So if you're applying from Vietnam or if you're applying from, let's say, different countries in ASEAN or Oceania, maybe the characters that they're looking for are going to be different than what I just stated because I'm Indonesian, because the quality that they're looking from Indonesian prospects might be different as well. And so, so just take what I just shared to you as something that's, just a grain of salt, something that adds to basically your repertoire, but like don't really take it as like a rigid dispositions or something. Okay, I hope that helps. If something else gonna help you, I would really suggest go to your official Australia Awards Scholarship website and follow through with some of the forms, which I'm gonna be showing next. Okay, so here's just what I just mentioned before, right? When it comes to finding out about the info, what I would recommend always is to go check your official site first, just to get a bit of glimpse and hints on what sort of qualities that they're looking for, right? In the case of Indonesian Australia Awards, you go to the website and then you can go to PhD and Masters because that's the only scholarships we have at the moment. And then go to applicants, and I'm pretty sure you go to selection process. Let me check. Okay, I could be wrong, but most likely I'm going to be right. There you go, right? So as you can see here, all the attributes, right, are listed in a table below. So, you want to, I wouldn't say emulate, but you want to showcase your qualities that are listed below. So for example, like curious, creative, positive, empathetic, charismatic, and, all these things essentially, right? And you want to display your skills in such a way during the interview. Obviously, during personal statement is also important, but like when it comes to skill, it's always applicative. And so sometimes they would, see your skills right away during the interview. So this is what I mean by showcasing yourself. It's not that you're acting, you just want to accentuate a bit more on your quality that's already here. And so that's that. So always check on the official website. Who knows, you might have some sort of hints being put out there, and don't miss it. That's it.